that's on the top of my head.
Well, really, the first question is kind of from your position, kind of where do you see customer service training being kind of dished out? Because I suppose you kind of cover all the different departments, don't you?
Yeah.
Which is quite helpful.
I think so. Obviously, because I don't know if you know my history, I've been with the company for 18 years coming up now. So started in ID, line manager in ID, did 8 or 9 years there, then moved over to Factors, did Factors line manager there. And then I've had various side projects throughout the years, and then last November moved into this role. So I think the main thing that people tend to forget in all lines of business is at the end of it, there's a client and a customer. And it's not about, sometimes you get feedback like, well, I had to do it because audit say so. Well, no, that's not quite. Ultimately, yes, you have a process to follow. Yes, you have something that you need to do. But ultimately, it's how we communicate to a client that we have to do something, or a debtor for that matter, and that I think we used to have, and I don't know how long ago it was now, but we used to have this thing that we said we're in a triangular relationship with a client. There's the client, there's the client manager, and there's us, and we are a part of their business. So it's not just about send me this, I'll send you some money. It's actually a full-on immersion of being in part of their business. And actually, I think when I was a line manager, I always used to say, well, how would you feel if somebody took that money away and didn't tell you out of your bank account?
Yeah.
How would you feel about the impact? You'd go nuts. You'd make a complaint. You'd do X, Y, and Z. And I think from that perspective, customer service is incredibly important for the clients and the customers that we deal with. But then we've got that additional layer since 2015 that Lloyd's is our client as well.
Yeah.
And people forget that actually, they are our client. How we communicate, what we do is ultimately, we should be treating Lloyd's exactly the same way as we would treat a client when we're treating them at the best of the ability, no matter how we feel about the situation or what we're being pushed into. So, from a Q&C perspective, whilst I don't get massively involved in the audit side of things, because I deal in the relationship with Lloyd's and the SQS and that side of things, what I do see when I do get involved, when I've got people challenging, is I think the two things that, it's the bin men out the front. I'm like, what's that noise? Is I find that communication, so customer service and communication go hand in hand. Where we have, and I'm trying to say this very nicely, a younger generation of people text speak within email. It's like people don't realise how you need to communicate to somebody. I'm not saying write a business letter, but put it in such a way that somebody, so I had one on Friday and it was like, well, they sent an email to the client. Yeah, the email said, send me the backup, we're reserving this. They don't know what that means. They don't know what reserve means necessarily. The client actually came back with, I have no idea. What does that mean? Why have I not got 48 grand? So people forget that how they communicate is a part of customer service. So be that internally, be that with a client, be that with Lloyd's, I think customer service training should be specific to each business unit to a certain extent. So for ID, it will be certain things because you've got different systems and different platforms that you go through. For Factors, it's the point that we also talk to the customer and how we talk to the customer, not like you owe us money, you need to pay us da-da-da. It's putting it in such a way that, it is a part of an immersive, happy, smiley. It's almost like, very simplistically, a lot of people, the way they communicate via email, they wouldn't say that to somebody's face.
Yeah.
And I think the training, in my view, should be more along the lines of how would you speak to somebody, ensure that your communication in writing or on the phone is in the same vein, rather than, just, I've sent an email, that's fine, I've ticked that box. Yeah, but nobody understood it and it didn't get what we want. And, we're still dealing with X, Y, and Z. And you have to balance all of that with the fact that people are running loads of clients. And, I don't know, what business stream are you in?
So I've predominantly come from ID until I became a development coach.
Yeah.
And I train in ID, really.
Yeah. So that's the thing, is I completely get that ID for the last 4 or 5 years has just been through absolute hell. And, with the shrinkage, so with losing people and everything, the pressures that are on there. But ultimately, that's no different to any other business.
Yeah.
Every other business is going through problems. People are expected to do more for less money. And we still have to provide that service, because ultimately, yes, we have to preserve the risk, and yes, we have to preserve and get as much money out the door as possible, because that's what makes us money. But how we do that is also vitally important, not just doing it, it's how we do it.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, I think you picked up on a really interesting point with like the younger generation, especially from like a training perspective, seeing a lot more of the younger generation coming through the door as new starters.
Yeah.
Actually, there is a whole different kind of perspective of the working environment.
Yeah.
And how they kind of react to because we are a very large corporate branded company as well. It's very different to some of the people who have been here, like yourself, for a long tenure, and how how that communication is taking place, and we see it as it's coming through the door. So that is a really interesting point as well.
And I think it's down to just general, and this sounds awful, I don't have children and I'm in my mid-50s, but I have friends who've got kids, and you talk about just silly things like, I don't know, I was talking to a friend the other day and she was talking about Google and information. I went, well, how do you think that got into the computer in the first place? Very simplistically, somebody had to physically type it in. The information had to. So there's, I think, a difference in generational styles, because everything's instant.
Yeah.
And they haven't been brought up necessarily or in the environment of long business letters and how things were done. It's almost lifting and dropping them out of school, where just K is fine and whatever else. It's almost like we need to, I think when training customer service, it's about making really sure that people understand it's how they would want to be treated, but at a higher level, but also how the communication should be. So almost like constructing an email, it's like there has to be a start, a middle, an end. You have to make your point, and you have to make the point not so that you understand, but so that somebody else gets it as well. And I don't think that's necessarily something that people come in with, that skill set. They're perfectly fine communicating, but they can't get it out of their fingers.
Yeah, and it's very different from them coming from where they may be just used to emailing friends or family to then coming into a world of business where that email needs to be professional.
So I do think if your whole project side of thing is along customer service, I think it is about very much putting yourself in the client's point of view, because for a lot of saying factors, yes, we've got very high-end stuff, but the bulk of our business is one-man, two-man bands, whatever else. That's their family business. That's how they make a living and how they provide. And therefore, what we communicate and how we communicate has to be done in such a way as that they understand it and are able to deal with it, rather than just, I've reserved this, you haven't sent me that. Of course, it all blows up, turns into a complaint. And all of that a lot of the complaints, I would say, within ID could probably be avoided with good communication and good customer service.
Yeah, I would totally agree.
Yeah.
Definitely. You want to be there to be trying to be helpful, even if it is like a negative, like say, like sticking maybe a large reserve in, just by explaining like the reasons why and trying to help them to overcome that happening again or take it away would just be so much easier.
Yeah, and I mean, and so from my new job's perspective, a lot of the time when I do get involved, it's when things are challenged. And again, there has to be a balance. I can't just, apparently my predecessor was like more of a, well, that's it, not discussing it. Whereas I'm happy to sit and discuss. However, this is our opinion of this. How do we, change it ongoing? Or let's look at, well, for ID, for instance, we haven't looked at what's audited for over 2 years because Cheryl hasn't sat down and gone through it all, whereas we do that on an annual basis with all the other areas. And, it's a case of working together. I still remember operations. I absolutely understand what the impact of failed audits is. However, on the other hand, Lloyd's is our client. And I can't just sit there and go, oh, yeah, I'll overturn that. Oh, yeah, that's what they meant to do. Yeah. And it's that, so for me, that balance is that customer service. I understand, let's see where we can go from here, but that stands. Or let me go into your team meetings, let people have an ask, which isn't generally taken on. Some areas have, and they've really appreciated it, because I'm an open book. I'm like, just ask me anything. If I don't know, I'll ask Karen. Just ask me. Do we just, what was one of them? Well, you clearly just pick all the ones that are failures. Do you really think we've got that much time to go through all of that? And so I've explained that, for us, if we find it under 100%, we then have to document everything because Lloyd's audit us separately. It then goes through calibration before it even goes out. So you're talking maybe 2 to 3 hours for failures. Mm-hmm. Dude, we haven't got the time there. It's just like really haven't got the time on that. All the staff, yeah. But I do think the whole customer service side of thing gets completely forgotten because the work and, doing the widgets. I have X amount of recs to do today. I've got this. Therefore, it's a task, very much a task-driven environment, as opposed to yes, tasks have to be done, but actually it's how we do them as well that has an impact.
It's almost a little bit quantity versus quality, isn't it?
And there's always that cycle goes throughout the years. Absolutely. So what is it that you're hoping to get out of all of this?
So I basically want to kind of, like I say, speak to all the different stakeholders, get their perspective of the customer service, and then I want to put together a customer service training pack that I can then deliver out to the departments, trying to cover all the different points that kind of everybody's given to me. And then that will actually get, when I do that, recorded and sent across to my assessor, and then I need to evaluate it and get feedback from it, and then put it all together as a report into the likes of Tracy and get her feedback from it, and then that will all go through to my assessor for my project.
So I think one of the things to definitely take into it, if you did you contact Molly at all?
Yes, I've got a meeting with Molly.
Because if you get the data of 12 months, 24 months worth of complaints in ID, you'll be able to extract an awful lot in there that customer service could have dealt with, or the correct communication could have dealt with it. And I think that would be a massive, boon for you and those areas if you can roll out something that would then cover that off.
Yeah, definitely. I've got a meeting with Molly this week. So that'd be really good.
Definitely try and get that information, just see if you can split ID factors and services. I mean, services tends to be more of a process-driven error. So where they have. So I think you're more left with factors and ID, and ID unfortunately have far higher volumes in terms of complaints, and out of that, very high volumes, I believe, are based on communication styles and customer service. So, you know, you would do incredibly well if you sort of go through that, and where you've got the understanding and the knowledge of ID as well, if you base it a lot on that.
Yeah, that would be really
I'm sure
good.
Charlotte and Tracy will absolutely, because obviously, the less complaints, and we used to work in a way of, we had complaints by all means, you know, before it became such a thing as it, you had to do the 7 steps or whatever. But we had them, and then you talked your way out of it, if that's a way of doing it. Somebody would phone up, oh, I'm so sorry, let me look into it, let me remediate it, let me get it done. Okay, this is what's happened, this is what we're going to do, are you happy now? Yes. Before we had to document all of that, you did use your customer service more.
Yeah, and ultimately, the person who is making a complaint, that's all they want, isn't it? They just want to resolve. And we've all been on the other end of it, where we've had to complain, whether it's to one of our utility companies or anybody in a shop or something. We've all been there, so we know what it's like. Yeah. And that's the thing, you need to remember that they are human beings at the end of the day as well.
I think that's the thing. It's again, it's that task-driven verse. There's actually a human at the end of it. And I think that's what, when we get incredibly busy, and, you know, for me, it's fine. All I deal with is data all day in and day out. It's not necessarily humans, it's data. But when you are working within operations, you are working with, you know, human beings at the end of it. And I think that gets forgotten.
Yeah, I do as well, because it's, to a lot of them, it's just a name, isn't it, on a system. And they forget that actually there are people there running that business. That's their job, that's their livelihood, that's their income.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, you know, and it is, like you say, it's the verbal, but most people are okay when they do actually bother to pick up the phone and speak to somebody. It's the written communication that I think is the bit that I would say, if you structured training around that, would be incredibly beneficial and give you a lot of bang for your buck.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Well, Chris, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I've got a lot to take away.
Is this a degree thing, the apprenticeship degree type scenario?
So I've already done the degree, and then this is an apprenticeship to become a L&D practitioner.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, I've only got a few months left.
If you ever need me to read something over, or I'm more than happy to. I've done that before for other colleagues when they're doing various things. So I'm more than happy, because I know you can get completely immersed and tunnel vision in what you're doing.
Definitely.
So absolutely, I'm more than happy to support you ongoing. And if you want to send me something or do anything like that, just feel free to reach out.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate that.
No.
Okay. Lovely.
Have a good rest of your day.
And you. Thanks, Chris. Bye.